Hi, I'm Mike Bills, Chief Operating Officer at AtlasRTX, and today we're going to talk about demystifying AI chatbots and how they're used in higher education. So my guests today are Dan Gaines, Associate Director of Marketing and Analytics at Purdue University's Krannert School of Management, and Dave Hunt, the Director of Marketing at Rockhurst University. So to get started with, first of all, what problems were you guys trying to solve? So why did you seek out a AI chatbot?
So one of the things we realized is that we had an emerging population of Gen Z students, and we need to be able to communicate with them more effectively through systems that they're more familiar with, texting, online chat services, and things like that. And so that was a concern we had, that we weren't up to other industry standards in chat services and things like that. The other thing was we have a global presence. Our university does, and it's we get students from all over the world, and we needed to be able to provide a service that interacted with them 24/7, can do it so in different languages, and there was no lag in wait time and responses. We also had to do this without expanding our staff. We had limited staff. And we had to figure out ways to not only not expand staff, but maximize the time that our current staff had. So give our staff a lift of answering those regular communications that would come in that could be automated, that they didn't have to be responding to thousands of emails. Instead, is there a service that could do that for them, get the students the responses that they need? So those were the primary obstacles and challenges that we were facing, and we thought a chatbot solution was ideal for that.
So Dave, you're not with a global brand like Purdue. So at Rockhurst, you're in Kansas City. You're a Jesuit school, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, so liberal arts school with professional programs, like 3,000-ish students.
Yeah, roughly. I mean, it all depends on how you count, full-time, part-time, et cetera. But yeah, I mean, that's a good, nice, round, even, estimate.
Sure. So it's a very different school. But were you trying to solve similar problems or?
Yeah, I think that certainly, much like Dan, we had seen the data that kind of showed that Gen Zers and our prospective student population, they, in many cases, liked communication through whether it be bots or texting or digital forms. And so we saw the data and we kind of understood that. And we have a texting solution in our marketing and admissions enrollment plan. But it became real for us when we started to look at using certain platforms that we use. And we were showing a gap in lead generation where there were prospects who needed information and weren't able to get it quickly. It wasn't at their fingertips, so to speak. And they were actually eventually falling out of the funnel. They weren't completing forms to become, a lead for us to be able to communicate with further. And so we saw all this data that kind of said, oh, this is a trend that's going on. It was in the back of my mind. And then it became real for us when we saw gaps in that lead generation. And so I kind of started to think through the chatbot solution, started talking to Atlas, obviously, and it just was really a great fit for us, even as a small private institution. I think that it's really worked out well for us and helped in that lead generation category.
So when you were exploring a chatbot, what was your evaluation process like? We'll start.
Actually, my first interaction with you guys was at a conference at the American Marketing Association Symposium at Higher Ed, and you had a booth there. So, we're talking about all these digital forms of outreach, and it was this old school, we're going to a conference, and we're going to talk to somebody in person. And I was really impressed with your team and certainly your approach and a customer service focus. And so there's, I looked at a variety of solutions, and I think that I like the platform, and it just seemed like, I guess maybe I'm a little old school in that sense, but it was that ability to have the customer service and have a kind of custom solution made for us was really kind of attractive to me.
Yeah, I'd agree. The custom aspect. I mean, we looked at a lot of different solutions that were very cookie cutter. It was a template kind of thing that you could do, and that was not going to work for us. We wanted something. We valued our customers to the point we wanted to deliver a custom solution for them, and so that was a big part of what attracted us to AtlasRTX. And the other thing was just the seamless integration of human and chatbot. So we did some demos with some different from some different vendors, and it seemed clunky, but with the solution that Atlas presented, it was very seamless as far as moving from a human to chatbot, texting back and forth. It just seemed like from a conversational perspective, that was the most fluid. It was so fluid that we thought that was a great solution for us.
So when you were in that exploration process, what were the key factors that you were evaluating? In addition to, and maybe you can elaborate some on that because at Atlas we say that humans and chatbots are better together. Mm-hmm. So can you talk more about that linkage of the chatbot and how you use it at Purdue?
Yeah, we have a team that supports the chatbot. Our chatbot responds complete response, satisfies customers in full 88% of the time, but we deliberately want to have some of that human interaction. So we don't want everything automated. We understand that there's some conversational topics that that require human interaction, and that what the chatbot does though, it draws those engagements deeper. So it's answering all the high level questions. So when our representatives do talk to somebody, they're at a much deeper level. There's a deeper conversation. There's a deeper commitment level that the chatbots already pulled them into. So when we talk about lead generation, it's also just really helps to the depth of our funnel to draw people in and help us to identify those leads that are really invested, really engaged with us. We have our applicants. We have about 20% of our conversations at some point turn into an applicant, whether it's, they're already there deep in the funnel, they're just asking questions about the application, or it's very high and they're just discovering things and the chatbot helps drive them through deeper into the funnel very quickly.
For me, interestingly enough, when I was analyzing and evaluating, AtlasRTX and just a chatbot as an option, I always come back to almost any investment is what's the ROI. I want to make sure that the juice is worth the squeeze. And it was actually through, you were set up with them prior to Rockhurst coming on board, and it was the impact it had for you guys. I saw the numbers and I said, well, I'm doing the math in my own head, and if it's as effective for us as it has been for Purdue, this absolutely makes sense. And, I'm pretty happy to say that when I look at the past just 12 months, we've doubled our lead generation. We've doubled the number of inquiries that have come in. I'm definitely a multi-touch attribution person, so there is a lot that goes into that lead generation. It's not going to be entirely because of any one communication or outreach method. But, double is double. You can kind of make some correlations between, integrating the chatbot into our strategy and a few other things that certainly has helped in that aspect. So for me, the ROI was the number one thing of seeing it from other institutions that have integrated the chatbot, and then certainly our experience in the last year as well.
That doubling is really remarkable. And as a trustee of an institution that's a lot like Rockhurst with 2,500 students, similar types of liberal arts core with professional programs, I wish we were seeing a doubling in inquiries. That's terrific, and the climate is tough. This has been a really tough enrollment time, and you're talking about a time frame that also accompanied dealt with COVID.
Yeah, which wasn't easy for any of us. Let's be honest. I don't know. There isn't a better way for me to say this other than the last year has been an interesting challenge for marketing and enrollment, I would say. And you just kind of, this is not the most eloquent answer. We've just been trying to get through it day by day and kind of adjust as needed. But I do think that having the digital forms of communication have helped, because it just, everybody was stuck at home. And we had to reduce campus tours. There were a lot of, some of those in-person things had to be changed. And so doing more things that were able to keep the communication and the outreach and the connection to our prospective student population up as best as possible, I think were important. We couldn't have predicted that the pandemic was going to happen, but we were happy and lucky to have this platform up and running when it hit.
Yeah, and I looked at your iPads data, and so I know that you've totally outperformed your peers when it's come to enrollment. So nice job.
Thank you. I wasn't going to say it, but I appreciate you saying it.
And because you're a graduate school, there's no iPads data for me to see. So can you talk about the impact it's had in enrollment for you, and also the competitive positioning where you are?
Yeah, so we have a lot of the same challenges. We are a business school. We're expanding into the online space, and so, but we also, as I mentioned, have a lot of international students. So one of the things that the Chatbot has really helped us with is being responsive to students and their needs. So having the digital platforms where students can get answers very quickly, or we could direct them to answers. I mean, that was huge. It built a lot of trust in a time where there was a lot of confusion for students, going through COVID, particularly international students, which, like I said, are very like a heartbeat of our graduate student population. So, it's the results have been very strong for us. As I mentioned, we have a very high rate of students who engage with the chatbot that do become students, or do eventually become applicants. A lot of confirms, come through that as well. And it's a highly competitive landscape being in a business school. We've been able to grow our enrollment over the last couple of years, which hasn't been the case for a lot of business schools. I think, and I know that the chatbot's been an integral part of that, as far as generating leads, but also matriculating them through the funnel, the admissions funnel.
And I'll add, it is an incredibly competitive landscape. I mean, we have a graduate business school as well, and are dabbling in the online space as well. And we have to compete with the Purdues and the ASUs and some of these others. And no shock to anybody, Purdue has a bigger brand recognition than a Rockhurst does. And so to me, I look at it as, for an institution like a small private institution like ourselves, we have to get creative. We have to get, or think through additional ways that we can find those students that are the right fit for Rockhurst, because it just, it is that competitive. And I think adding a solution like this is one step toward that. It's one additional way to connect and get people to understand what the Rockhurst opportunity and education is for them, if it's right for them.
Nice. So, have there been any surprises that you've experienced since this has been deployed on your website?
I think just it's fun to see the interactions that prospective students have with the chatbot, because some of them don't even realize it's a bot. Some of them do, and they act like it is a human, and they're very appreciative and thankful because they're getting the answers that they, the vast majority are have very positive experiences, so I mean that was surprising me. I wasn't really sure what the reception would be like when we first launched it, but I think we're delivering a custom solution that meets so many needs that. I think that is the key to something like this, and just how quickly the impact was. I expected some, impact, but once the data started rolling in, we started seeing the impact, how it was servicing so many prospective students after business hours that we didn't even realize. Like those are just emails, or they're not even talking to us before, but now they're engaging with us directly on a chatbot, delivering us so much information about. What's important to them, how we've been able to use that data to inform our other communications. I mean, there's just been a lot of benefits, a lot of surprises that I wasn't anticipating walking in, but it's been very, very good.
Yeah, I think that certainly same experience as Dan and some of the things that surprised there. One thing that always stood out to me was I really enjoyed the process as we were getting set up of kind of predicting, trying to predict what are probably going to be the common questions or queries that users might have. And certainly we were boosted by obviously other institutions that had already been working with you, and you kind of had some data from that. But you do this work to make all these kind of predictions based on your institution, and then within like 2 weeks you realize there's this trend of like, I should have predicted that, but I did not. And so then it's a matter of, okay, well, great, let's figure out how do we provide a solution to that question or that line of thinking from a user, and that kind of ongoing process. And so that I think has just been really kind of interesting to me, is you're almost learning about your audience through the bot, of just learning what it is that matters to them, what is it they're looking for, that you can't necessarily see just through page views and where's all the traffic going. It's an actual interaction and conversation that you can learn a lot from that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So as you were deciding to do this, most decisions in higher education, we euphemize what we call shared governance, which is our euphemism for committee deciding everything. So did you have resistance from many corners in your organizations?
I mean, I have resistance just to the term shared governance. I naturally jump out to like, I personally didn't, actually. I think that, I'm really blessed to work with a lot of people who kind of think along the same lines as I do in terms of that ROI element. And when we had all the data and I was presenting a bunch of information and data that kind of said, here's a gap, here's a problem, here's a potential solution. And so everybody really, actually, honestly, for me was on board. So I haven't really had any resistance, which is an unusual experience sometimes. Usually there is at least one detractor that you have to have conversations with to help them, bring them along and accompany them, but not with this. So
nice.
Yeah.
How about you, Dan?
Yeah, I mean, there's some convincing that had to be done. I mean, it was pretty new for business school, but I was fortunate to work in a business school where they understand the need for optimization and in our communication, and there's some savvy with marketing, and understanding how to business processes and things. And from that standpoint is what really, I think, intrigued some of the decision makers. But when it came to like the marketing aspect and like really generating results, that's where it really paid off, and I was able to share a lot of great results from it. So it was, I think, beyond their expectation.
Yeah, the preference to not speak to a human being, I think, is fairly powerful. In fact, it's one of the areas that I've been, and I've worked with one of my actually colleagues from graduate school about improving diversity, equity, and inclusion with a chatbot, because you have this bot that's not going to judge you. So if you're talking about a sensitive subject like financial aid and trying to get your family's AGI, that can be embarrassing to talk to, especially if you're a first-generation student from a low socioeconomic background, and you're talking to somebody who already has an advanced degree, who's solidly middle class. That can be intimidating. But if it's a bot, that bot's not gonna judge you. Yeah,
or just people who just are what's the right way to phrase this? Just they would just prefer to communicate through digital forms instead of to a person, which is neither right or wrong or good or bad. It's just how some people just are. And so honestly, my wife and I are so different in that when we want to order a pizza, for example, she wants to call the pizza place, and I'm like, I don't remember the last time I called a pizza place. I'm gonna fill out the form on the website and enter it, and I'm gonna pay the tip there so that it's just done. And that's just my preference. And I think that's what we're talking about here, is that we integrated a chatbot not to replace other communication or outreach methods. It's just another way. It's another channel. But that the talking to bringing people to campus and communicating and interacting with them in person is still a powerful part of our process. This is just another way to communicate.
Yeah, and we've actually found that some of our prospective students, they use the chatbot to they deliberately want to talk to a human, but they'd rather do that than go through and fill out a form and submit, an online form, hear back 2 or 3 days later. They're wanting to, have that, that immediate engagement. So, there's that audience that maybe doesn't want to talk to some, but then there's some that I want to talk to somebody, but I want to do it quickly. I want to have that direct engagement. So,
that right there speaks to the RTX in our name.
Absolutely.
Real-time experience.
And I think it's kind of related to just the fragmentation of audiences in general. I mean, when you look at that just through how we consume media these days, that, you go back 50 years in television and there were 10 channels, and now there's so many different ways that people want to consume media and interact with others that you as a whether it's marketing communications, you have to continue to keep up with those preferences. And so that's, again, where I come back to, you provide all these different ways to communicate and connect with the university because it's just it's just the sign of the times as much as anything.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, Dan, I know that you started off, I think you engaged with the chatbot in like 3 different bites, right? You started off with one of your MBA programs,
mm-hmm.
and then was it moving into the master's degrees? And then there's an online component and a PhD component.
Yeah.
So what events, as you took each of those steps, made you confident to then go take the next step?
Yeah, so we did start with our our MBA master's programs. That's where we kind of a proving ground to see where things were working. But once, and I go back to the data. Once we saw the interactions that were happening, and just we actually had a time series that Atlas you guys did for us, and it was really interesting to see the progression in conversations that would happen. And with online education, those intervals are so much quicker, and so we had to have a responsive system they could operate at that same speed, because we have spring, fall, and summer entry terms, and so there's a lot of turnover, a lot of things that happen there. And so the chatbot, the fact that we'd already done the proving testing ground with masters, it was like ideal to move directly into the online programs and to see immediate results. It was just kind of a progression there of working with our master's programs. The second part was the PhD, which was just a whole different animal in itself. So that requires some thinking, but we feel like we got a good solution there. A lot of leads coming in through that, and then the online was all that really helped just make a natural transition to the online space.
Nice. So, and you've also started to engage with texting subsequently,
mm-hmm.
right? So can you just explain what your and it's still somewhat nascent. So
mm-hmm.
What are your objectives with engaging with text?
Yeah, so we, with the chatbot experience, we want to make sure that students have the engagement that they're seeking, and so we have an automated text that goes out after a conversation is completed, and that text asks if the prospective student wants to set up an online meeting with one of our program specialists, and we've seen quite a few that they had a good experience with the bot, but I mentioned that group that wants to talk to somebody, they're seeking to talk to somebody, so they get that text follow-up, and they're entering into our platform where we talk directly. They can set up a meeting to talk directly with one of our program specialists. So it's been highly effective so far. We've only had it for a few months, but just within first 10 days or so, we had 30 appointments that were set up just from the text follow-up. So we'll see how it continues to grow, but it's been a good feature.
Get the gears turning in my head now. So,
well, so let me help you with the gears. So especially in undergraduate, because a student when they apply and are admitted, they've also been admitted into a half a dozen other institutions. So the use case that I see that can be really effective there is engaging with them via text. So, getting from the CRM that, okay, they've been admitted, and now we can engage to see, first of all, get a sense of how interested are you in Rockhurst, right? Or were we just one of just you don't have that much interest. So if we can figure out how interested you are, then your enrollment folks they know who to focus on, versus trying to just focus on all of the admitted students. But you can also just highlight why Rockhurst is where they should go, and not the other 4 or 5 places that they've been admitted to.
Yeah. And certainly, this would be a great conversation. I wish our undergraduate admissions team was here, because they could probably shed even more light on how a tool like that would be really good for our particular audience. Kind of offhand, I kind of think about it through a lens of, we know that with Rockhurst, that when we can get them to campus and they actually see and feel the campus, that's a game changer in a lot of ways. I know a lot of students that they were convinced in their minds they were going to go to a large 4-year public school, which nothing wrong with that. My undergraduate's from a large 4-year public. That was what was the right fit for me. But a lot of these students, when they came to Rockhurst, they didn't think small private school was what they really wanted. But then they actually got to campus, and it changed for them. And so I'm thinking in my own head of, when you talk about how interested are you, I immediately kind of think to the campus visit part, because a lot of times they're already admitted before they've ever come to campus. And so maybe there's an avenue there for Rockhurst to say, here's a kind of a soft or a less invasive isn't the right way to put it, but just a very quick and easy way to connect and say, hey, congratulations on being admitted. Love to see you on campus. If you'd like to talk to one of our admissions counselors or something. And certainly we want to work on the language and that actual outreach with everybody here. But again, I think that's where it comes back to, as we talked about it at the top, that customized solution, the ability to say, well, what works exactly for Purdue may not be exactly what's right for Rockhurst, but let's modify and let's customize it for what we know is going to work for them and their audience.
Nice. So, have your bots become smarter over time?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So can you explain some of its learnings?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. I mean, we're manually. There's a bit of manual to that sometimes, but then we've noticed that there's been changes that we haven't really, programmed, and be like, I think you're asking about this, and it'll key right on to what the student's asking. So it's been just pretty interesting. A lot of it's with the keyword searches, what they're really, even if it's off here or there, learning different languages, ways that the students are asking things. That's when you talk about like things you weren't really expecting to see that. It's pretty neat to see that evolve.
Yeah, I agree. And there's one particular example that stands out to me because, again, nobody could have predicted the onset of the pandemic. And so there's certain keywords that when it wasn't a pandemic, it was pretty obvious and clear what the user was asking about when we talk about calendars and schedules. And so one thing I noticed, and there's some manual to this too at first, was there were a lot of queries coming in about calendar and schedule last May and June. And it naturally thought of, they're talking about the academic calendar or class schedules. What they're really asking about was, what does fall look like in the middle of a pandemic? Like, what is it going to be like? Are we starting on time? What's happening? And so we noticed that it was a slight shift. And so, there was some manual kind of coding, et cetera, that goes on. I don't know how that all works. I just know it happens. But then we've seen it start to figure out the difference there of, what are they really asking about based on some other contextual clues through the conversation? And so there's been less of that, they're actually trying to ask this question, let's fix this or modify that. And so that's kind of the one example that really stood out to me. And that's just one of many, really.
Cool. So now you both have a fair amount of experience with this. And so what advice would you give to others in your positions that are considering some AI automation on their website?
Yeah, I'll go first and just say be bold, because higher ed is a very traditional industry, and a chatbot is new technology that doesn't necessarily fit into that traditional mold. But I think that if anybody out there who thinks that they're seeing a gap or that they just feel like there's something missing in that communication strategy, to be bold and to give it a shot, if nothing else. I mean, I think that's what most people would probably say, like, well, I just don't know if this is going to work. But I think the data kind of speaks for itself. At least for me, it does.
Yeah, I'd say to really understand all the potential benefits of a chatbot, to really seek out to understand that, and then find a partner. And that's what we see AtlasRTX as, a partner, because we're constantly growing and evolving together. But you need to find that partner that's going to deliver those benefits, and so don't settle. We both have customized solutions, and I think it's rewarded our efforts in spades. It's like there's some work up front, understand that, but the benefits long term are so much, and the amount of time that it saves across your staff, your team. There's just so many things to consider when you're talking about investing in a chatbot, to really understand that, and then find a partner that's going to deliver on that for you.
Yeah, I don't think this is the thing that you're like, I want to dip my toe in and dabble.
Yeah.
It's if you're going to do it, commit yourself to it, and I agree. Find that partner that is going to be there and walk alongside you through the process. But yeah, this is something where you're like, well, I want to try this. I think it's harder to get the results that you're hoping for and looking for. I think that's what I mean by be bold. Like, you just dive in.
So to the ROI point that you made before, and so that's of course important to me. I'm a former finance professor, so and you need to focus for ROI both on the benefit, and then the whole value equation is benefit divided by risk. So can you speak to both sides of that value equation? So what risk did you take by engaging with Atlas in that bold way, and what has been the benefit?
I think from a risk standpoint, I think it's there is an investment into time, financial, energy, and working in higher education, there's a lot of demands, and so you want to make sure that what you're doing is going to work. If you're going to invest your resources into something, and higher education also not the biggest budget, so you have to make sure that what the solution that you're coming up with is going to work. And so but on the flip side of that reward, if you take a step out, do something bold, something different, and you see good results, it pays off huge.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. I think that, and as somebody that's at a smaller institution, I think they certainly feel that the weight of, got to make sure that I use our budget appropriately. So yeah, there is a risk with that, but I think that if you do your due diligence and say, all of the indicating factors are there to say that it's unlikely this won't work, that it's more likely that it will work based on whatever factors you're using to analyze an option. Then you have to sometimes believe in your own analysis, right? And go, this says it should work, so I'm just gonna go ahead and do it, and dive in and invest in it. So, but yeah, there's always an inherent risk anytime that you want to try something new. But yeah.
Yeah, but I also think there's risk in not trying new things.
Yep.
Also, if you're just standing pat, doing everything that your competitors are doing, you're not creating the solutions that are for your customer, that are unique to your prospective student. Then you're taking a huge risk there as well. That in a highly competitive space.
Sure. And in both your cases, the majority of your traffic on your website comes after hours and on weekends when there's nobody there.
Mm-hmm.
So so you're able to engage with with an audience that that is brand new. Like you literally doubled the, or in some cases, some of our clients have tripled the audience that they're able to engage with because there's an autonomous bot that's operating 24/7, 365. So when I think about the ROI calculation, the risk, of course, is there's an expense, but with the tuition being what it is, in most cases you need 1 or 2 incremental enrollments that you wouldn't have otherwise had, and you're in the black.
Yeah. And I would say too that you mentioned the traffic coming in after hours, which is absolutely true. And we did, I'll admit, when we were considering all the different options, live chat was an option that I considered. And part of the reason that I actually gravitated more towards the bot was control over the message and control over making sure that it's a unified and consistent message that we're saying out there. So if there was an option, any sort of live chat option where it was being outsourced to other individuals, you can train all you want that other individual, but they're also a human being that has the ability to make their own choices. Yeah. And you want to make sure that you are having that consistent message and saying, this is what Rockhurst is, who we are, and you want to make sure that comes through very clearly. And I think the bot actually helped with that because you train it and you keep that message intact that way.
So with a student is thinking about going to Rockhurst, they're thinking about what programs you have, what Kansas City's like, what student life is like. So does the bot help with all of those?
Yeah, cost is another one. Yeah. Let's be very real about higher ed right now. It is about how much do you cost, and what are you going to do for me? Yeah. Like what are they going to be my outcomes after I graduate? Those are two of the very biggest, and of course you have the program that I want to be in. And so we programmed the bot knowing that those are going to be the primary points of emphasis, I guess, for our prospective students. And really we see that that's where a lot of the conversation goes to is programs, cost, affordability, outcomes. And so it actually really helped to very quickly and easily drive students or prospects to things like our scholarship calculator. Based on your GPA and your ACT, SAT scores, here's what you can expect in financial aid and scholarship offer. And I think, again, the less that we require students to navigate the site on their own, and admittedly, our internal site search functionality is, it's just not as good as I would like it to be. We'll put it that way. I don't have as much control over that as I'd like, but this is something where you can just take out the ambiguity out of internal site search and just directly say, oh, you're interested in scholarships and financial aid? Here, let me take you right to where you got to go. And I think that's been really helpful.
Nice. And the graduate business student is thinking about, they've got questions similar. Do I need a GMAT score? How long does the program take? What's the starting salary for graduates, et cetera? So is your bot able to address those more?
Yeah, definitely. We're talking about adult learners, so they haven't been in school, so they don't remember all the process. So the bot's great about just helping guide them through the process. They have questions about GRE, GMAT, the forms they got to submit, it's a whole new ball game for them, trying to navigate through the application process. So that's a big function of the bot. But then, just things, with career opportunities, you're trying to assess ROI. Should I commit a year or 2 years, 3 years to studying, whether in person or online, and is that going to give me the benefits that I'm looking for? The ROI on their time and their investment. It helps to answer all those kinds of questions, and we've with things like the pandemic, we had COVID-related responses, things like that. All things timely and relevant to what their questions are in their experience.
You give me nightmare reminders of when I applied to grad school with all the GRE, GMAT, and I'm just like, I have no idea what any of this is. So,
and international students, it's even more. They got language test scores, and they're asking all sorts of questions about what's campus life like? Yeah, there's a lot of dynamics, but the bot handles it.
So your traffic is very heavily international.
It is.
So how well does the bot serve those international students?
It serves them really well. The language function has come in handy for sure on some occasions, and we actually have some where parents are engaging with the bot on behalf of their student in different parts of the world, and so to have something that can speak to them in their native language, they're not English is not even a second language for them, so to be able to have that feature is very beneficial for them, we've had great interactions with international students, and as far as like driving to actually having a conversation with a person, those are some of the students that are they're just have a lot of questions. I mean, they're talking about leaving family, everything, and so the quicker we can connect them with people or a service that guides them in that direction, the better we're going to have a chance to get their application and bring them here as students. So,
well, thank you, Dan and Dave. I think you've done a great job in helping to explain the benefits of a chatbot, the process of selecting one, what it addresses, how it serves your students, and thank you so much because you've been a big part of us learning about higher ed as well. So anyway, thank you guys.
Appreciate you having us.
Yeah, thank you.